Tash Talks is brought to you by Recharge, simplifying growth for consumer brands. Hello and welcome to Tash Talks, the show where we meet some of the most inspirational female leaders in the UK today. Today we have a super important topic, the topic of audacity and how to be more audacious. And I'm joined by two incredible women, Amelia Sordell, personal branding expert and the founder of Clout, and Alina Addison, the author of the Audacity Code and the founder of Adaptaa. Welcome, Amelia. So good to have you here. I'm going to kick off with my very first question, which I ask all the guests that come on this show. Who was Amelia as a little girl and who are you today?
God, that's a good question. Amelia as a little girl, I think, was probably quite naive and very much like excited about the world and wanted to be someone one day, but I don't necessarily think had the confidence to do it. I think a lot of women can probably relate to that. We've got these big dreams and big aspirations, but don't really have a pathway, or at least society hasn't told us there's a pathway to be that. And so I definitely felt when I look back at who that little girl was, that she probably lacked a lot of confidence. She probably really didn't enjoy the company of strangers. Doing something like this would have been like, absolutely no. And Amelia today is audacious.
The opposite.
Yeah,
confident.
completely opposite. I did a workshop very recently with a big conglomerate, and one of the guys said to me, how did you get so confident? And honestly, I think that the best answer I can give anyone, and who I am and probably who the three of us are, is that confidence has become through just doing it and just living, and other people not being okay with that, but you being okay with that. So very different women and to the girl I was 20 years ago, 30 years ago.
So today you're a founder, you're an author. Just explain about your business, Clout, and what it does.
Yeah, so Clout actually started as a personal branding agency. So we used to ghostwrite clients' content, we create content for their Instagrams, we help them grow. And we typically work and still do work with founders, because founders building in public is very sexy right now. You look at Elon Musk, Mark Zuckerberg, even Donald Trump. These people have spent millions and millions of dollars building their personal brands to be able to get ahead in their careers. And that's not new. You know, Bill Gates did it, Steve Jobs did it, but now it's very mainstream, and a lot of young founders, particularly seeing how important being active on social media is, because people buy from people. But now we very much evolved into an education and media company. So instead of ghostwriting clients' content, which we do have an arm of the business that still does that, the majority of our business is basically teaching people how to do this for themselves, giving them the tools, the tactics, and the confidence and the audacity to actually go out and just post. I'm such a big believer that so many people hold themselves back from the potential that they can reach, and more importantly, perhaps the potential their business can reach, because they themselves are not confident enough to just do it. Just go out there, put your face in a camera, do something like this, ask for that speaking gig, tell that publisher that you've got something to write about. You need to ask yourself, or rather give yourself more permission than waiting for things to kind of fall in your lap. So that's what we do now.
And we've known each other for some time, and the personal branding industry, I might agree, personal branding's always been around, and people used to build their personal brands in mainstream media. But on social media, it's really exploded, hasn't it? If you look at the content on LinkedIn, across social, of founders building their personal brand, what changes have you seen?
I think, look, influencer as a kind of concept is now very mainstream, right? I think if you'd asked people what an influencer was 30 years ago, they would have said a politician or an actress or a businessman, probably. Now, an influencer is someone who has got a following of some kind, whether that's online or off, and who influences people. And so I don't think it's a surprise that the marketing of a business has followed that same kind of marketing trend, because people buy from people. They've always bought from people. I remember there was that scandal with Cambridge Analytica many years ago, and everyone was going, oh my goodness, how could they possibly have persuaded these people to have voted that way? But that's how PR and marketing has worked for millennia. People being influenced into doing something by other people is how this game works. And so I think a lot of founders now, and particularly a lot of bigger businesses, are going, right, not only have people always bought from people, but now they don't buy from polished people. They don't buy from the marketing and PR comms approved quote that's gone out after a crisis has happened, or we've had an acquisition, or whatever it might be.
Or from the model that's been employed for a certain role.
Yeah, people don't care about that anymore. Even if we kind of wider marketing, it's why TripAdvisor exists. No one trusts any companies anymore, because companies lie. It's hard for a human being to lie and get away with it so easily. So when you put your founder and your CEO at the front of your business, you win sure pockets and checks and all that kind of stuff, but you also win the minds and the hearts of your customer, and that really breeds loyalty. It really breeds repeat business, which is something a huge amount, particularly with e-commerce. And I think there are more and more founders realizing that you don't have to stand behind the brand anymore. Actually, if you want to win quickly, even if you've got funding or not got funding, the quickest route to market is through your own story, why you set the business up, really speaking to your customers, speaking to your employees and also potential employees, and getting people really bought into your journey. And we've seen this with Ben Francis at Gymshark, Grace Beverly with Tala, Stephen Bartlett's probably a more kind of obvious example. All of these founders have recognized the power of turning their own brand into a media company and then building businesses off the back of it.
And you've written this book, Personal Branding Playbook, which tells people how they can do it. But what I love is your opening here. This book's dedicated to anyone and everyone who's ever had the audacity to be 100% okay with the consequences of being themselves, both online and offline.
Yeah.
What does it take for somebody to put themselves out there, and why is audacity important?
Oh,
I mean, people are born for it, and naturals, and others it's a big deal to start building a personal brand and putting yourself on camera.
Do you know what's funny? I spoke to someone about this recently, and they said, I'm an introvert. Like, how do I build my personal brand? I said, you know what's really funny is introverts get their energy from being alone. Extroverts get their energy from being with other people, but neither one of those people are necessarily automatically confident. And I think that's a big misconception with just human beings generally.
I agree, actually. There's different things there.
Yeah, so I'm naturally really extroverted, but really lacked confidence for most of my childhood and adult life. I didn't think I was smart enough. I didn't think I was pretty enough. I didn't think I was enough, period. And so that translates into lack of self-esteem and lack of confidence, because we get confidence from evidence, right? So if the evidence is you are not smart enough, you're not good enough, you're not pretty enough, then you think, okay, I'm not any of those things, so I'm just going to shrink so that no one notices me. And that can happen whether you're introverted or extroverted. So coming back to your question of how can anyone have the audacity to be themselves, I think there's probably a bit of a deeper dive here, and you can probably speak more about this as well. We are very scared to be ourselves, not because people who are themselves are special and we're not, because we have part of our brain that's been there for millennia that basically says, if you raise eyebrows with your tribe, you'll get booted out of the tribe and then probably eaten by some kind of saber-toothed tiger. And so you have this constant narrative in your head of, I must protect myself, I must protect myself, I must protect myself. And so you don't show people who you really are, because what if you're rejected for it? It's much safer to just be conformative and stay in your lane and not ruffle feathers, because then there's no danger in that. The problem is there are no such thing, unfortunately, as saber-toothed tigers and dinosaurs anymore, right? Like, we're not going to get eaten by anything necessarily. So that part of our brain, albeit was really important at one point, is no longer helpful to us pursuing the things that we want to pursue. And so I wish I could say there was some great hack you could use to become audacious, to become confident, to become who you probably are meant to be. But actually what you just need to do is do it. And I think one of the probably more practical ways you can do this is, we spoke about this previously with my list with my partner. I made a list, which all my friends laughed hilarious so much at me for. I was like, I've got 79 things on my list of what I want in a partner. And they're like, you're insane. And the first thing on that list was 6'2" or over. My partner's 5'8", so we didn't get really that one. But every other thing on that list was about values, was about what that person had in their heart, what they cared about, all these kind of things that are really intrinsically important. And I've now met that person, we're engaged, and it's amazing. But I think the reason I met that person was because I became that person. So when we talk about the point of this, which is how can you become confident, how can you become audacious, you become it. You make your list. Who would I need to be? What behaviors would I need to have to be that person? And then you do it. There's a reason why fake it till you make it is a thing, but actually let's go deeper than that. Who do you need to be if you were the best version of yourself? You make that list and then you become that list. And I think that's a very powerful thing.
And you've built a large personal brand across social media, and I'm sure many people watching will recognize you and probably know who you are. But interestingly, one of those things you talked about, the fear of sort of rejection from your community or being judged, did happen to you, didn't it? When you found that your friends, and this is an incredible story because this would be like my worst fear.
It was around when we first met, actually, that this happened.
So tell everyone what happened, because if this happened to me, I definitely would cry.
Okay, and I think I probably did, actually. It was brutal. So I just started really taking my personal brand really seriously. I'd already been posting content online, but it was very much geared towards my what I did as a career. I was trying to build up a following around employer branding and marketing, because that's kind of what I did as a job. And so I guess it didn't feel so unsafe, because
it was in the realms of work.
It was in the realms of work. So none of my friends really, I guess, noticed that I was doing this. And then when I did one post that was maybe a little bit more personal and saw this, the response was like unbelievable. I was like, wow, like I thought I needed to be professional on a professional networking site, LinkedIn, in order for me to get ahead. And actually what I really need to be is personal and professional. Like I can provide insight and humanity. And so the more I started doing this, the bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger my brand got. And at one point I went from about 13,000 followers to 24 in the space of a few months. Like I was doubling almost every quarter, which was amazing. But in the background, my friends, who I'm very happy to say are no longer friends with me anymore, thought that I was like egotistical. They thought that, well, who does she think she is to be doing this?
Which
And
I think is the fear of who do they think, who do you think, if that's what everyone thinks, people will think, who do I think I am?
Yeah. And unfortunately for me, they screenshot images of my content and they posted it into a WhatsApp group. I don't know whether the group was set up intentionally to do this or not, so I'm not going to say it was, but I wasn't in the group.
Yeah.
And they shared these screenshots of my content in the group to basically make fun of me. And it happened over and over again. It wasn't like a one-off thing. There was like about 4 or 5 posts that went in there over a period of a couple of months. Oh my God, who does she think she is? All of this kind of stuff. And actually it was a person who was in that group that ended up telling me. I don't know whether she partook in, she may have and then felt guilty, but she told me what was going on, sent me evidence of what people have been saying, people who I thought were really good friends with me, and needless to say, I'm not friends with those people anymore. At the time, I was devastated. I thought, like, these people, I don't know if it was actually the mocking that was so sad. It was the fact that these were people I loved and that I really trusted and all of this kind of stuff. And it was almost like, it was the backstabbing, I think, that was the most painful bit. But the reality is, people are who they are, and that's okay, but they don't necessarily need to be with you for your entire journey. I love the saying, people come into your life for a reason, a season, or a lifetime, and those people's season was up, and that's okay. And I think sometimes when you're doing something, whether it be building your personal brand, getting that promotion at work, getting married, not getting married, traveling the world, whatever it is that you decide to do with your life that people around you don't support, whether it's to your face or not, normally people say you shouldn't when they actually mean I can't. And you doing something that perhaps highlights their inaction of their own doing can feel uncomfortable for those people. And it's much easier for them to make fun of you than to actually accept that they are incapable or unwilling to do the thing that you are actually doing. So I think when you frame it that way, it's like, okay, cool. That hurt, that stung, but they weren't really my friends anyway, because if they were my friends, they'd be supporting me.
It wouldn't have happened. It wouldn't have happened. Alina, over to you. Welcome. I'm super excited to have you here. Let's kick off by asking you, who was Alina as a little girl and who are you today?
What a wonderful question. I actually listened to you, Amelia. So for me, I was very conforming as a little Alina. So I went to a boarding nursery at the age of 2 in communist Romania. So that was the very early stages, conforming to a lot of rules.
Wow.
And then I became a gymnast, as most of the girls would in Romania. And then I became an athlete. So I became a sprinter, which I am even today, asking who's Alina today. But so I qualified to the national championships of athletics at the age of 14 in the finals of 100 meters. And then I went on to a university in Romania, and then I came to university in the UK. I became an investment banker, an accountant, all of the things that are very conforming.
I can imagine you've lived in very clear structures of this, fitness, job roles, incredible.
Yeah, so I became very good at conforming.
Yeah.
But at heart, I knew I was extremely non-conforming, interestingly. And that's the sort of my journey for the last 15 years or so, or definitely 10. So Alina today is non-conforming. I am the founder of Adaptaa, who is I call it unicorn of women at the moment, and we're doing leadership development and executive coaching. I'm also the author of the book, The Audacity Spectrum, and probably my biggest fame or claim to fame is my hotel in Transylvania. So I built that hotel as an investment banker, and that's probably the one I'm most proud of.
A hotel in Transylvania?
A hotel in Transylvania overlooking the Dracula Castle, and that's why I'm taking...
Is it the actual Hotel Transylvania?
It's called the Transylvanian Inn, but it's not, the actual Hotel Transylvania. I wish it was, but it's not that, but very close. It's very close to that sort of story. So I'm taking leaders. This is the 5th year I'm taking them for Audacious Leaders Retreats.
I bet they love it. I imagine it's the sort of place everybody wants to go. So let's come on to your book, because I saw you'd written this book and I thought, oh my goodness, I have to meet you and get you onto this show. Your book's called The Audacity Spectrum. You're trying to make audacity and audaciousness as well known as Brené Brown has made vulnerability. How has that become your mission and what does that mean to you?
It is. It's a big mission to even state that I want to redefine audacity the way that Brené Brown redefined vulnerability.
Yeah.
Because when she started on that journey, vulnerability was such a dirty word.
Yeah.
And audacity, interestingly, still has to this day, maybe less so than 5 years ago when I brought it into the consciousness, but it still has this negative connotation.
And what is the negative connotation around?
Well, it's that sort of you had the audacity to do. So it's got this paradox on the spectrum of it's someone who it's got a little bit of the awesomeness. Oh, it's awesome that you are. But also the judgment, how dare you do it? So it's got a really fine line in terms of, and audacity especially, you had the audacity to do so or say so. It's probably more negative than Amelia is audacious or Tash is audacious. It's interesting.
I do agree. I think if someone says, oh, and then they had the audacity, that is the negative view of that person, isn't it?
Indeed. So it's got this sort of negative overtones, if you like, to the point that when I was deciding to take the book to a mainstream publisher, the first publisher actually refused the book on the premise that it had audacity in the title. And I remember how strongly I felt about it, interestingly, that I wasn't going to let that one go. And I'm glad I didn't.
It's amazing you didn't. So what does it mean to you, audacity? And how can it be redefined into a wholly positive word?
Yes, and maybe not wholly positive, interesting. For me, I've learned that you have to accept both sides. You have to accept the positive and the negative is what is. But the redefining it's courage, which most people will know audacity for, so the boldness. But it's also got this caring part. So I'm bringing the pillar of caring. And the non-conformity, again, I think audacity is probably historically known for the non-conformity, but it is to the point that it could become reckless. So my redefinition of it is you've got to be okay on that spectrum and you have to play with all of these three pillars. And when you care so much about your mission, about other people, that you don't care about what other people think, that's audacity to me, because this is what Amelia was talking about. It is the fear of judgment. It's so prevalent for the human being that it stops us doing audacious things.
And you obviously work with lots of leaders, men and women. How do you coach them in becoming more audacious and what differences do you see in them as a result?
But it's going back again, and I think Amelia talked about confidence, and I talk a lot about in the book that for me, it's not about confidence, interestingly. I redefine and reframe everything. It's about courage. So when people say, I don't have the confidence, it's like, that's okay. Do you have the courage to do whatever it is that you're at the moment reluctant to do? And that's sort of 2%. So it's more about teaching courage. And because confidence is a consequence. Most people say, I need to be confident. So they look at it as a prerequisite of something. You need courage to do something, and then confidence will come as a result from constantly trying and failing and experimenting, having that tenacity. So that's how, and there is a model in the book, which is a very, very simple model, but it's so powerful, is the sort of the comfort zone, the 3 circles.
Yeah.
The comfort zone, the stretch zone, and then there is also a panic zone. But it is having this willingness to stay in discomfort, having this willingness to stretch outside of that comfort zone, because that's where you're going to grow. That's where you're going to.
And I think a lot of people think it's just about making big decisions, like deciding to build a personal brand. But Alina, you talk about how it's in small decisions in everyday life as well. Can you give some examples on that?
Yeah, certainly. It is about the sort of small steps. And I always say it's the first step, which is the second step, because most people, they might just take that first step, but it's sustaining it and being okay with the second, like the child who first learns to walk. The first one is the second one, and then they've got the courage and the confidence to keep going. So it is having that, I call it small conversation, but it's having a difficult conversation, not necessarily going and in order to build the personal brand, it's again, who do you need to speak to? Having that courage to engage in a conversation, to ask for something. And actually the asking is probably one of the less used and the most powerful way of doing most things, including building a personal brand.
And when you're working with the women, what changes do you see as they take your approach and become more audacious in themselves? What do you see happens in their broader lives?
It is probably what you're on the outside, it is the confidence, because that's the language that we have.
Yeah.
So they do become more comfortable in their own skin. They do become more comfortable with being uncomfortable, i.e. being okay to stay in the discomfort. They are more courageous in
not caring about some other people's judgments, and that's a big one in the way that they make decisions to do or not do something, and boldly just going to achieve whatever it is that they want to achieve, those sort of impossible goals. That's why I'm feeling so passionate about.
So you've both talked about confidence coming as a result of doing, not having confidence first. Why have we all got ourselves in such a bundle of knots that you need to have confidence in all the answers first? How's that come about? And how can you switch that in your own head?
I love that you said it's courage, because it is. It's I said earlier, confidence is the result of evidence, and you have to have the kind of courage to do the thing to get the evidence before you get the confidence. I think it's the language that we use, probably. You were saying like the audacity is negative when someone's confident. Oh, she's confident. He's confident. He's so confident. I wish I was more confident. And I think it's the language that we probably use, not just as a society, but ourselves as well. I wish I was more confident. I think that's probably the biggest thing that stops us from doing stuff. And I also think you were saying something earlier about your comfort zone, your stretch zone, your panic zone. A lot of people are a lot happier in staying in their comfort zone, even if it's mediocre, than just taking one little step out into the stretch zone because it's unknown.
Yeah.
And I think the
Whether
known,
they're happy, but they'd prefer to do that than stay in it.
this is a horrible example to use, but I have a very close family member who's been really depressed for a very long, and they have had so many ways of getting out of that thing. And it wasn't until they were out of it that they were like, you know what, like I was choosing to stay in it.
Wow.
Because they'd been in this kind of hole for so long that actually it was comfortable, because it was recognizable, familiar.
Yeah.
And actually doing something different to change the situation they were in felt really scary, because even though they were miserable, they knew what to expect. Whereas if they did something different, they didn't know what to expect. And that kind of comes back to this fear conversation of when you do something different and you raise everyone's eyebrows and there's the fear kind of element that kicks in, that potentially is why a lot of people don't take that step out into the stretch zone, do something different, get that courage to do the thing that they probably know they should do, but don't have the courage to do it because they need to be confident first, right?
I think there's an equation here of courage leads to confidence. Alina, you said if you can take the courageous move once, then twice, then you get the confidence. Is that literally all you need to do, is take the courageous move twice? Because if you were saying to people, look, the secret of confidence is to do the courageous thing twice, more people would find their way through to confidence, wouldn't they?
Totally. I'm not sure that twice, but certainly twice will then make it easier for you to do it the third time, the fourth time. The more you are experimenting, you will realize that actually it's no big deal, but it is the first step, as Amelia was saying. And it's a very, to your point of small little steps.
Yeah.
I remember reading a book years back, and the very last chapter said, do something different every day, even if it is getting to the wrong stop. So you get to a stop before or after that you don't normally do. And I remember doing it, and actually I was like, oh wow, I've never been here. And it was only one stop away, but I've discovered a new area. I live in Dulwich.
Yeah.
So it felt uncomfortable to almost, when I think back, it's like, this is so strange. But anything like this, I had a client who was really comfortable just having the same cereal every morning, which was boring, but it was comfort zone. So even a small little things like that, it will then stretch you, and then you start getting bigger and bigger.
Oh, that's fantastic. You don't even need to do the big move. I'm always prone to the same breakfast every single day of my whole life. What were you about to say, Mary?
I was just going to say, a good example of that is with my daughter. Like she's been what I would say a fussy eater most of her life. And so at dinner time, we're just like making little small changes. So instead of having like chicken with breadcrumbs on it, why don't we have chicken breast with some kind of sauce? And then we now look back at a year later, she's now eating like tacos with guacamole and like paella and whatever. And she just thinks it's normal now, but that's because she's not noticed the tiny little changes that have happened along the way. So it's not just a conversation for adults. I think it's a wider thing for everyone. Like do just one little thing differently and it can make a massive change. My first business failed, and this is my second business, and like this is doing relatively well.
Yeah.
So the confidence I got from that one not going well has given me the confidence to keep making the hard decisions in this one.
And Amelia, you've got a great secret for confidence, which
Do I?
which you told me all about, which is living in celebrity energy or stepping
Yes.
into celebrity energy.
Yes.
And that's something you're doing now. You're always someone that drives yourself forwards.
Yeah.
So now you're living in celebrity energy. I love this as a concept. Can you tell us about it?
Yeah, so I have this kind of theory that when you meet a celebrity of any kind, if you've ever met anyone quite well known, typically what they do is they make you feel good. It's not about like you making them feel good and basking in the attention they're getting, or can I get a picture with you? they don't thrive in that. They thrive in the interaction with you and you feeling incredible that you got to have an interaction with them. And when I look at like narcissists, if you want to give like a better word, that we see a lot of online and
oh,
like,
relentless narcissism content online.
yeah, right. This sort of like really like ego fulfilling content where it's all about them and this is what I'm doing and aren't I great and all of that kind of stuff. And I understand why people do that because it does get a lot of attention and people follow that type of content. But that type of energy is very much like your attention makes me feel good.
Yeah.
And one of the things that I've been doing for a while, but haven't really given like a name to it now. So now I call it like live in your celebrity, like it's the celebrity energy theory. If you approach your life and your content and any interaction you have with people as what can I do to make this person feel amazing about this interaction? Like even little things like when I got my coffee this morning from Starbucks in Euston, the guy said, what can I get you? And I was like, oh, I'd love a cappuccino, please. And he was like, great. And I was like, how are you doing? And he was like, yeah, great. Thanks for asking. And I was like, good, have a good day. And carried on. And he might not necessarily have understood that interaction, but it's made him feel like that is a conscious thing. You can call it strategy or not, but I do that consciously. Like I'm trying all the time to make someone else feel good.
Yeah.
Because I think if you can do that in all your little tiny little interactions in your life, that compounds into quite a big effect. So call it celebrity energy, call it whatever you want. But when you take that approach to your life, your content, your interactions, your friendships, strangers, whatever, that has a compound effect on every other part of your life. And I don't think it's a surprise I've ended up having amazing opportunities off the back of kind of trying to make my interaction with everyone as nice as humanly possible.
And you also make sure you have a lot of interactions, don't you? I know from your content, you try and meet new people all the time and spend with no goal other than they're interesting.
Think I'm mad. Yeah. So I'd have this kind of KPI where I have to DM 10 strangers every month. And normally I get ignored by at least 5. They're like, what's she selling? That's just a bit weird. 3.
What do you say?
I'm just like, hi, I came across your profile. This is really cool. And I normally find people interesting for some reason.
Yeah,
so I'd say why I found that person particularly interesting, or we have a mutual contact or something like that. And I'm normally like, look, this might sound really weird, and I promise I'm not like a stalker, but I really love meeting people in real life. So would you mind if I took you for a coffee and we could just meet up? Some people think I'm mental. Other people think I'm selling and they go, not interested. And normally about 2 or 3 people will go, actually, that's really cool. Like, yeah, I would love to. And I've made friends that way. I've made business contacts that way. I've ended up having brand partnerships that way. I've also been invited to like random supper clubs and dinners and all kinds of stuff that way. And I think, sure, it's a way of networking and it's a way of kind of meeting new people. But actually what it's done is it's given me just loads of confidence to be able to do whatever I want. Because if I can DM 10 strangers who think I'm crazy for messaging them and go and meet them, I try to, every month, doesn't always work out until like the 2 or 3 coffees happening in that month. Like diaries are nuts, right? But it does eventually kick on. So I've had 3 coffees this month, one with the most incredible woman who, you know, I won't say her name, but has an OBE. Like, she's the most amazing woman I've ever met in my life. And I literally DM'd her on LinkedIn and I was like, I think you're fab. You went through a divorce, looked like it sucked. My divorce sucked too. I was like, would love to take you for a coffee. And she was like, yeah, I would love to. And I was like, she replied, okay, cool, when can you be here?
Oh, so, that's brilliant. As soon as I heard that, I thought that is definitely something I need to do, is do that. It sounds like a fantastic thing to be doing and meeting loads of new people that way.
Yeah.
And Alina, in terms of your work, you have 8 A's of audacious leadership. What can people watching today take away in terms of taking some of your frameworks into their own life, whether in a small everyday way or in a big way, so that they can move towards the goals they've got, which they don't feel audacious or confident enough to move towards without that framework?
So yes, there are 8 A's of Audacity, effectively, and they all start with an A. And that's a little story in there. It's interestingly, when I was pitching my first book, and even to this publisher, I said, I want to have the book with most A's in it. And that was, of course, crazy. And they said no to that. As I'm teaching people,
I have the same story, but mine was swear words.
And then but they accepted that I have all the chapters starting with an A. So I have attunement, which is the first one, which is, you know, really the ability to slow down, to feel your own feelings, but also to tune into others' feelings. Then you have the acknowledgement, which is, again, the ability to know your own strengths and your weakness, and then accept them both equally. Then you have the assurance, which is the courage to say yes to all of these opportunities. The assertiveness, which is the courage to say no, and that's probably one of the most difficult ones for us that I had to learn. Then you have authenticity, which is the courage not to care about what other people think. It is just having that telling the truth, your own truth, and truth to power. Then you have advocacy, which is when you care so much about someone or something that you move mountains effectively.
Yeah.
And then the adaptability, which is the courage to let go and let be, the flexibility. And finally, my most favorite one is the appreciation, which is really seeing the positive in life, even in the most difficult moments. And there is a quiz, and actually there is a free quiz that anybody can do online, and you can find where you are on that Audacity star. I call it a star because it's a North Star, because you've got the 8 peaks. So you could see what is your superpower. For me, assurance, because I lead with yes. I say yes to everything, almost to a fault.
Yeah.
So you see where you are in terms of your peaks, and then where do you need maybe to stretch in some of the other ones. But yeah, I mean, someone was saying to me, oh, Alina, what about agency? It's like, oh, that's a really great A, because you need agency. You need to be able to make choices wherever you are on those
and feel
A's.
you can make them from yourself.
Yeah.
And of all those A's that you've just laid out there, which one is the most important? Or are you going to say they're all important?
Of course, they're all important. I mean, it's easy. We all have our own favorites. The one which I struggle the most, even today, is this ability to say no. I'm very, very proficient as accepting no. So you can give me any no's all day long. I have no problem. Actually, giving a no, that is still quite a challenge. And I always say it comes probably from, so the story, the inspiration for the book is my son, who is on the autistic spectrum. And if you know anybody on the spectrum, they actually physically cannot hear no. So he's been my best student and actually my best teacher in learning how to say no to someone who will not accept it first time. And there's a whole page of, you can actually say no by not saying no. It's like, yes, but can we do this later? And so that's probably the one that I'm still, it's my favorite, because it's the road to mastery is a road, and I'm still practicing. The one that was the most difficult one to write was the attunement. It wasn't in the first script. The attunement, I only had 7 A's originally, and because the 7 I thought was my lucky number, so I was going to go with 7. And then the editor said, Alina, I think you need an 8th A. And I said, oh, you need the one that will capture the whole emotional intelligence, which you've been working with, the whole feelings. And she said, you need to write this attunement, which became the first chapter. And it took me the most time to write. It took me as long to write that one chapter as it took me to write all of the other. And I still remember, are you kidding me, having to do this? But I'm so grateful to her for making me write it.
Yeah.
Because not only, it was a huge period of self-reflection for me, but it allowed me to do this Audacity Star all of a sudden. So the framework came from that, being open-minded and being challenged and being okay in the outside of the comfort zone. And so, yeah, it's probably one that it's most intimate, it's the most difficult one to teach, I think, the attunement piece.
Great. So as we wrap up, final piece of advice from both of you. For somebody to take a step towards their most courageous, confident, audacious self, what's the one thing you think they should do, Amelia?
I think action beats strategy every time. Like, I can give you every strategy, every hack, this is how I did it, this is how you should do it. But actually, unless you're willing to take that step yourself, it's almost impossible for you to get anywhere in life. Whether it be, getting out the starting blocks on your race, or whether it be, doing something like this, or whatever, even just asking someone on a date, or saying hi to the guy that gave you the coffee this morning. Like, you have to take that action. And I think if I've learned something today, which is the courage thing. Like, it really is courage. You only have to have the courage to do one thing. That's it. Because that one thing becomes so many other things.
Yeah.
So yeah, I would normally swear, but I would say just do it. Like, just and do it.
And Alina?
It would be the same. For me, it's actually making audacious requests. So, and this is a great example, you role model, Amelia, because it's just asking someone, it feels uncomfortable, but see what comes and be okay with the no. I'm talking to myself. We always say, just be willing to hear 1,000 no's, and actually the 1,001 yes, it's going to be phenomenal. If you're willing to send, however, 10, and you get 2 out of 10 every month, that's incredible. That's incredible. That's the thing. That's how you do build it. And be kind in the process. I love your story. And to me, it doesn't take anything to make someone feel good.
But also makes you feel good.
Of course.
And that's actually very attractive. Like, you speak about authenticity. Like, when you really lead with that, that's so magnetic to people. There's even a scientific study done that measures the frequency of energy that we emit. Authenticity is 4,000 times more powerful than love and hate. So when you lead with like genuine care and like really who you are, you might be judged for it, sure, but like how powerful is that? Like, that opens up doors that you just don't have access to.
Oh, amazing. Thank you so much, Alina. Thank you, Amelia. It's been wonderful having you on today. Thank you.
Thank you, Tash. Thank you, Amelia.
Thank you.
Tash Talks is brought to you by Recharge, simplifying growth for consumer brands.